Now, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to listen or watch the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. interview with Caitlin Collins on CNN last night. I've been very opinionated and honest about what I think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what I think about the person that has lived his life in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And for those of you that don't know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has done this show before. I think he's a despicable human being. I think he's a disgrace. I think he's a very bad and unfaithful man based on the fact that what we know of his ex-wife who committed suicide after reading his diary of infidelity. This is a lunatic. Why do I say lunatic? Not just because he's a serial cheater, beheading whales, staging bear murders in Central Park, and his conspiracy theories about vaccines and medicine. Over and over, I've said he's a really bad guy. He's not honest, and he just wants to be in power, and he has a tremendous ego, and he's lived off his last name for his entire life. So Caitlin Collins interviewed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. yesterday. And keep in mind that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been trying to tell us what he thinks we should do with our bodies. He's been trying to give us medical opinions, many of which are conspiracy theories. And now all of a sudden he's telling us, well, don't listen to me. Listen to the real doctors. Have a listen to this.
And what President Biden did wrong. What I'm saying to you...
But I want to get back to what your comment was about that you said that people should not take your medical advice.
Yeah,
that's your position?
Yeah, absolutely. People should not be taking medical advice. I'm somebody who is not a physician, but they should also be skeptical about any medical advice. They need to do their own research. You know, you're a mom. If you're a mom, you do your own research on your baby carriage, on your baby bottles, on your baby formula.
But they don't have medical degrees, obviously. If you're a mom and you're looking at what science has been tested, they trust their doctors and their pediatricians.
One of the responsibilities of living in a democracy where physicians and every sort of expert are subject to all kinds of biases. One of the responsibilities of living in a democracy is to do your own research and to make up your own mind.
So that's your message to moms or to anyone, is to do your own research.
I would say be skeptical of authority. My father told me that when I was a young kid. People in authority lie. And we've seen a lot of that in our country. And people in the media lie. And people need to make their own judgments and be skeptical and maintain their capacity for critical thinking. And that was shut down during COVID. And the media was complicit in that.
Disagree on that last part. Secretary Kennedy, thank you for your time.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, there you go. That was the end of the interview where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. finally admits that, well, people should listen to those with medical degrees, and maybe they shouldn't listen to somebody like me. Then why does he keep giving out medical opinions and giving people medical advice when he's telling people at the end of this interview, maybe you shouldn't listen to people like me? Don't you guys have a problem with that? I certainly do. And then it goes into the situation where Caitlin Collins asked him about, trusting the science, right? Because we've heard MAGA Republicans complain, oh, you guys keep saying trust the science, do your own research. And then the kooks listen to people like, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speak. But now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying, well, we should listen to the science. It's a very confusing message to what we've heard over the course of the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years from people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Listen to this.
Trusting the experts is not a feature of science. It's not a feature of democracy. It's a feature of religion and totalitarianism. What we should do is trust the science. And we are going to do the science, and the science is going to be replicable, and it's going to be gold standard so that parents can make their own choices about what is best for their family and their health.
But I think people, the message was to trust the science and what studies were finding and what
during
people were
COVID,
doing.
that was a bad message. It was trust the experts. That's what you kept telling us. Trust the experts.
I don't know that I ever said that. We talked to the officials. Actually,
your network was saying it every day.
We took the briefings live every day with all of the experts that President Trump. Those were President Trump's doctors. But those are the people President Trump brought out to the briefings.
Oh, President Trump brought, and I can.
He brought Dr. Fauci and
chapter and verse, I can tell you what President Trump did right and what President Biden did wrong.
Notice how he won't talk about what Donald Trump did wrong and what Joe Biden did right. It's such a joke. And listen to what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying. He's saying we shouldn't listen to the experts. We should listen to the science. Do you think the experts just form their opinions with nothing science backed? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. This guy is a complete imbecile. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a complete imbecile, conspiracy theorist, nut job who has been wearing a tinfoil hat his entire life. So on one side, he says, don't listen to the experts. On the other side, he says, listen to the science. If there's anybody that hasn't listened to the science, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has been an anti-vaccine idiot his entire life. And here's another interesting note, if you didn't think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was a complete imbecile already. So Caitlin Collins says, why did you replicate studies that have already been done? That's exactly what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing as the head of Health and Human Services. He's literally doing the same thing. He's replicating studies. Why is he doing that? Listen to this ridiculous answer, and the question is very relevant.
We will have some studies completed by September. And those studies will mainly be replication studies of studies that have already been done. We're also deploying new teams of scientists, 15 groups of scientists. We're going to send those grants out to bid within 3 weeks.
Why would you replicate studies that have been done?
Because the only way you can get good science is through replication. If you don't have replication, you don't know whether other scientists looking at the same data will arrive at the same conclusion. Good science always includes replication. In fact, we're changing the procedures at NIH so that up to 20% of the funding at NIH is for replication. If you don't have replication, you have incentives to cheat, and there's a lot of cheating that goes on in science.
Okay, but
Is there anybody that listens to this guy speak, anybody at all, that thinks he has any bit of credibility? Anybody at all? Like, I'm not trying to gaslight here. Every single word that this guy says is absolutely and positively insane. First of all, you don't just replicate every study. If a study is done correctly, what's the reason for replicating it 6 months or a year later? Give me the actual reason on why you would do that. It makes absolutely no sense. You say we shouldn't trust the experts, we should trust the science, when actual real infectious disease experts and actual real experts in the field of medicine, where do you think they get their information from? Off the top of their head? Of course, much of it is science-based. So talk about a double entendre there. It makes absolutely no sense. But he's telling you, don't listen to him for medical advice. Then why don't you shut up then? Why are you even doing these interviews? Because all you do is try to give people medical advice of what we should or shouldn't eat. You try to give people advice on what vaccines can or can't do. You try to give people advice on how they should live their lives. And this is the same guy who stages bear murders in Central Park, the guy that beheads whales, who's never been faithful to one woman he's ever had in his life. And I'm supposed to listen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tell me what I should do with my body? Are you effing kidding me? He is right about one thing. You should listen to actual people with medical degrees that have actual degrees and expertise in their field, and don't listen to some moron who's lived off the last name his entire life, who is a despicable human being.